You spoke of the 70s. How was it in the 70s?
Well, I mean, I grew up in the time of the oil embargo and the Iranian hostage crisis, and I remember as a small child doing duck and cover drills, in case of a nuclear attack, and so it just the mindset, of that time frame, I think is just I feel that we're in that kind of a little bit fractured world when you have, war in Ukraine. Now we have war in the Middle East. What does that look like? There's a little bit of unknown with what China may or may not do. It's that uncertainty as much as anything that I think is causing me to feel more similar to the 70s than the previous the intermediate time frame.
What do you think we should be doing from a policy perspective?
Yeah, I mean, definitely from a workforce perspective, we need to recruit more people, more young people into our industry. The high tech sector has spent a lot, in terms of making the tech sector, appealing, and it was a high wage area. High tech is, not as robust as it once was. I think that traditional engineering and infrastructure is something that I think will have a resurgence. I really do. Both of my children are in the construction industry. My daughter just graduated from civil engineering. They see the value of building things that last. I think that is a failing on our part to provide that kind of story, that kind of history to our young people. I grew up with it. It was inherited every day. I was watching projects, being built. I'd hear a whistle. I lived in Grand Coulee. I'd hear a whistle, and then, 5 minutes later, there'd be a boom, and they were blasting away a granite mountain as they were putting in the third powerhouse. I don't think kids today really understand that civilization would not be here but for engineering. And contractors, of course, and architects and the like. But this whole area provides their creature comforts. Everybody likes clean water. Everybody likes, working sewer systems, transportation system. Those kind of things are valuable, and you should view this profession as a life calling. And I think that we have the ability to do that. We need to work with youngsters. ACEC is involved with a program called the ACE Mentor Program, which stands for Architecture, Construction, and Engineering. And we have groups of people from the industry, work with young students in high school ages, and they work on real problems and get them interested. And then from an ACEC perspective, we provide scholarships to these kids. And that's what it's going to take. It's going to take involvement, it's going to take vision, and it's going to take the ability to articulate why this is important.
And you're bringing up really, really interesting points. Yeah. One of them is you spoke about near shore or onshore, or bringing back some of these industries that we've been kind of outsourcing or pushing out for some period of time.
Well, there's a lot of things I think that are going to potentially fall within this arena.
Can you name some?
Yeah, pharmaceuticals, semiconductor, anything that is within the supply chain of, critical supply chain, certainly for national defense, I think is being seriously looked at. Even if you are a person that is, 100%, let's go in, green, initiative. How do we deal with the fact that, where so many of those required, materials and so on are sourced from places that are not really within our control. I mean, I'm talking about a Western, not United States, but a Western control. And, and they're being manufactured, elsewhere. Those are all important considerations. Is it inflationary? Yes. And are we going to see, in my opinion, are we going to see continued inflation? Yes. But I think ultimately the upside of all of that is going to be a much broader, capital capacity.
Tim Cook, CEO of Apple, currently, was asked a similar question at one point in time, and his answer was that we don't go to China because we try to save on some of the production that we do in our iPhones, producing our iPhones or whatever products. It's just because, and he gave an example that Apple are very specific about the materials they use in producing or manufacturing their products.
Right.
And he gave an example that if you walk into a room in China and you wanted a materials engineer, you could literally fill a room with 50 of the brightest engineers you can imagine in a day or two. While in the United States, you'll be lucky if you find one in 3 or 4 months. I'm not quoting word for word, but pretty much that was the meaning of his answer.
Mhm.
Do you agree with him? Do you think that we're lacking on that skill set, or we have it, but it's just not paying enough? We're not paying people enough to go and study materials. You just said your daughter just graduated in civil engineering. What would motivate a high school student to go and study materials engineering if
Yeah.
it's not known how much we're going to pay him at the end of the day, or how fast will his pretty much career would be?
Yeah, I mean, and it's a little bit, chicken the egg. We're talking about what Tim Cook said. It's, there has to be the opportunity before you can fill the opportunity. So if you are having those opportunities here, if you're making them available, and the compensation range is sufficient to attract people, build it, they will come. So is that a longer term prospect? Yes. And that's why I said this is going to be, I think, an ongoing kind of, decadal kind of process. But as salaries go up, people will be drawn. And so it is basic economic law. I believe in basic economic theory, which is that, supply and demand. And so if there's a demand here, and there is a need for it, people will see the utility in that. At the same time, we also need to do a much better job of advertising that, of educating people to those opportunities, to have a much more robust, at least from an engineering perspective, consulting engineering perspective, of what are those opportunities.
Why do we continue to fail on that front? Why do we consistently fail in promoting and marketing engineering and their work properly and big enough?
Engineers are not very good salesmen.
They're terrible.
Yeah, and that's a kind of a tongue-in-cheek response, but it's also very much reality. I think many engineers, both in the sense that they're not very good at marketing themselves, their careers, their trade, whatever you want to call it. But they're pretty humble people. And so they're embarrassed almost embarrassed in a way. They're not, but almost. They find it hard to talk about their own accomplishments. Maybe that's why I wasn't a great or a continuing engineer. I was a deep number cruncher. I wasn't. How do we take something that is a little bit complex, and how do we simplify that and to provide and present a message that will appeal to kids that are 7 or 8 years old? That's where we need to start. We need to start attracting kids and for them to see the value. And I think at that age, it's not about money. It's about, oh, this is something that is valued. It is something that is honored. It's something that is really revered. And that's what I think we need to maintain within the engineering profession. And I certainly my ACEC members are very much about this. Is how do we maintain that ability to be viewed as a professional, and what it means to be a professional, not just a number cruncher, not just a product supplier, but a profession. You are a professional, and what does that mean?
Bringing back all these jobs to the United States. Do you think we'll be able to produce products, to manufacture products that will continue to be competitive from a price point?
Yeah,
I'm sure from an engineering standpoint they will be, because I think we have fantastic engineers and we manufacture and produce best products across different industries. But from a price point, we'll be able to compete. We'll be able to continue to dominate globally with the quality of our products compared to other countries.
Yeah. Well, like I said, that depends upon a number of factors, but one of the things that technology, we talked about kind of the potential double-edged sword of AI. Technology has always been a bit of a double-edged sword. I saw a picture, go back in time, in New York City, in a picture where the streets were filled with horse and buggies, and it was 10 years later, and there wasn't a single horse and buggy on the streets. It was filled with cars. And so we all have always had these technological revolutions, and they're very disruptive. I think that, yes, AI could be that. I think that we're looking at, potentially other, things that will drive down costs, robotics. There's a lot of things out there that would affect the efficiency and manufacturing costs of items. The other thing that I think is going to be important is sourcing of materials. Where are we getting materials? And I know that there's the potential that they just discovered a very large lithium deposit in Southern Oregon, Northern California. And it's in a substrate that's much more accessible than many of the lithium sources across the world, which are amongst hard rock. This is much more of a clay-like material. So it's in one of the old volcano calderas in the Nevada and Oregon. And so those are just other things that I as I get older, I kind of maybe take a little bit longer, bigger term picture and say, yes, we have issues in this country, but there's going to be continued opportunity. I think the other thing that we're going to see is continue if manufacturing comes back to the United States, and I say that's an if, then internal transportation, our waterway transportation is going to become probably much more important, going forward than it's been for a while. It used to be, so much was transported by water and river systems that's likely to maybe reappear. Don't know.
If you were asked or appointed to be a Secretary of Transportation in the United States government, what would be your first 1, 2, or 3 action items that you would take?
Oh, that's a fascinating question. I had not considered that at all. The thing about our infrastructure or our transportation system is it's both a state system and an international, an interstate system. And so I've always, and this is not an ACEC perspective, this is my own personal perspective, that we really need to look at the transportation system from an economic return on investment. And so where do you invest and to get that return on investment? And that's going to take a bit of prognostication, going forward. We've largely built out the interstate system, but what does that look like? Are there other modes of transportation, again, like water, that become important? Of course, highways is one, rail is another. Is it something that we look at it's obviously being looked at in corridors today, but from a freight movement, perspective, all of the modes of transportation, I think, are going to come into play. So I don't have a crystal ball or anything. We need to keep funding our transportation system because it is, I think, the economic engine of the country. When the interstate system was originally built out and we had the railroad system and such in place, that's when we really, were able to reach the highest kind of level of manufacturing and production. Of course, things changed. Do
you agree to the direction we're taking right now?
I'm sorry?
Do you agree to the direction the federal government is taking right now? Does it appeal to you? Do you feel that we have a master plan that we're executing against with clear milestones and objectives, trying to achieve something next 3 to 5 years? Do you think it's been strategically planned and executed, or now it's just whatever comes?
Well, I think the need to pass various packages like IIJA, it requires you to get to the appropriate number of votes in the House and the appropriate number of votes in the Senate. So many of those funding proposals are put together in such ways to provide that majority vote. Is that the most efficient way? Probably not. But I think that our governmental system, that's just the nature of the beast, is that it's about compromise and what are the needs of one area and the needs of another. At the same time, the ability to see the United States as a whole and to provide for those kind of much more global needs and visions is important. And I think that we've done a pretty good job of that, to date. Unfortunately, as divided as the United States is, politically and in Washington, D.C., that becomes difficult. But like everything else, I think that changes. I do not envision that the division within our country is going to remain forever. I think that times will change that. I'm a big believer in the saying that easy times make easy people make hard times make hard people.
That's a really good quote.
Yeah.
Good saying, I should say. As we wrap up, is there any advice or insights you'd like to share with aspiring professionals in the AEC industry out there?
Yeah, I am, in terms of people coming into consulting engineering, I am absolutely convinced that you are making the right decision. I think the opportunities for advancement and growth are certainly not are much better and bigger than when I came into engineering. I was again at the tail end of the baby boom. I always had this huge demographic, blob, mass of people in front of me. That's not any longer the case. People are in demand, and so it is a great time to enter into this profession and to both do very creative things, to work in collaborative groups, to envision, to be responsible for projects at a very young age. My son became a project manager for a vertical contractor at 29, and he was running a $50 million construction job at 29. And
impressive.
So the opportunities are there. And so it is partly, that, again, we haven't done a very good job as a profession to portray that. I think it's also the reality that this has changed very quickly. The impacts of the retirement of the baby boom are just showing themselves in the last 3, 4, 5 years, and kind of the realization that all of that experience and knowledge is going away. What are we going to do? And at the same time, we need a lot more people because there's a ton of work that's coming.
Did you ever consider a political career?
Not really. I mean,
someone with your background, someone with your experience and expertise, we could definitely use more people like you in the government.
Well,
do things properly.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. I maybe at one point in time I had contemplated it, but I also have the need to be right.
This is being politically correct,
and that's not always easy to do. Yeah. So it's easy in the sense when I represent ACEC, I represent the interests of my members, and so my own personal likes and dislikes and whatever perspectives are underneath that, and that's easily done, and that certainly is what you do as an attorney as well. You represent the best interests of your client. If I was elected, I would be having to put out there my own perspectives, and that is something I could not do and be, I think, CEO of ACEC.
Of course. Thank you for the time given for us today. We really appreciate all the answers and the insights you've given us, and we really hope that we talk to you in the future.
Yeah,
Host you again.
I'd be happy to talk anytime.